Hi there, this is Dr. Tom Knotts, and I want to thank you for allowing me to take the time to teach you on the four temperaments. People often don't know what a temperament is. It's where we get the idea of a temper, or in other words, that which holds a person together. When you temperamental, it means you've either made it strong or it's half strong, half weak. I mean, for instance, when they make specialized blades, if you see a discoloration or a hemp line, that means one part of the metal is stronger than the other part. Temper is that which has become solidified within the no conscious part of the brain. It's the 3-year-old part of the brain upon which the entire holistic base of the heroism of the personality and all characteristics and traits will come from. If you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, it would be the first layer of the foundation of the psyche. It's never older than 3 years old. Once a person has become set in their temper, or their temperament has been made rigid, solidified by the 6-year-old, around 6 years of age, when the personality is fully developed, the personality emerges around the age of 7. The temperament is designed and constructed within the first 2 years primarily. It becomes solidified by the age of 3. The character, what we call a person's character, is then built next. It's between the ages of 3 and 4 years of old. It's what's called the value system, and the belief system is then created at that time period. It's actuated around the age of 5. Between the ages of 5 and 6 is when the personality that comes out of that is developed. And at the age of 7 is when the frontal lobes, it happens as the brain develops, all this takes place. The frontal lobes are then developed, and the person can now live in what we call the conscious state. So it comes out of the no conscious into the unconscious into the conscious state. There are 4 types of temperament. No person will have 100% of each. I mean, the only way they could is if they were a programmed computer. It's common to find that happening in, say, the MK Ultra or the Monarch field or the mind control science realm. It's where they condition people to be better. It's not just the United States, but it's all around the world. Specifically, in North Korea is one of the leading places for that, which is why it's a place of interest amongst many groups. The 4 types of temperament are classified as sanguine, choleric, melancholy, and phlegmatic. Now, those are not terms that people are very used to today. So I'm going to describe to you today what a sanguine is. The sanguine will be the first one. A sanguine is a person that I call a shallow individual, but a very warm and friendly. They've been classified like a golden retriever or a Labrador puppy. They're very warm, they're very fuzzy. Everybody's their friend. When they meet them, they're kind, they're outgoing, they're very responsive. If you talk to them, they will make eye contact with you. They can feel your emotion. They're highly emphatic. That means they're really able to give and receive love. Very warm, very emotional. They're incredibly talkative. And talkative to the point to where they'll get closer to you when they engage you. They'll make you feel like you're the only person in their world. It's not uncommon for them to be the touchy-feely kind of person, the one that's always touching you when they go to talk to you, because they want you to know that they're hooking up with you and they're making you the most important. They will make you feel like they are your best friend for life. But unfortunately, when you walk away and somebody else walks in the room, they'll do the exact same thing to them. I've got a Shih Tzu dog named Buster. He's a 100% sanguine. He will leave with anybody. That dog has no morals. I've had to stop him from following people out trying to get in their car. He just jumps in your lap and thinks that you want to pet him. He's your best friend. He's your whole world. Sanguines are the same way. They're very enthusiastic. They think that everybody wants to love them. They want to love everybody else. They're compassionate people, and they generally are compassionate. You can feel the love of a sanguine. They're the most emotionally charged person in a positive way that you will meet. The rule of thumb is a sanguine has never met somebody they didn't want to be their friend. Well, those are what we would consider to be their strengths, but they have several weaknesses that will arise from the strengths. So in other words, a strength can also be a place of great weakness. For instance, sanguines are undisciplined. Sanguines may be good dressers. They'll go out and look normal in public, but it's not uncommon. Actually, it's very common to go into their garage if they're a man and find it in a disheveled way. Things everywhere. They'll tell you where the stuff is. To go into their room, and their room is chaotic. Their home is, it's livable, but it's usually just not really clean. They're undisciplined. They don't like to follow through on projects. They'll start things. They'll be warm and happy to help you. But, once their mind starts drifting, they can go do other things. So they have a problem staying focused or on track. They're very conversational. They're great to have at checkout counters or places where they're constantly engaging different people. That would be a place where they could thrive or work. Unfortunately, because of their adaptability and their engageability, they're emotionally unstable. They can go from being the happiest person in the world to watching a movie and then crying about it. I mean, it's just they're emotionally unstable. And sometimes they're likened to being bipolar, except they don't go through a 2-week to 4-week cycle phase. They do it many times throughout the day. They tend to be highly unproductive. If you hire, and I was in the workforce for 31 years before my heart gave out, and I met many sanguines. Sanguines are not production people. Sanguine is not going to be somebody that wants to work for piece rate. You can't have them stocking shelves unless you just really don't care. They're the person that if you have them on a floor working will be the one that will constantly engage the customers. They won't just tell them where a product is. They'll take 5 to 10 minutes to talk about their clothing, why they're there, how great it is to work there. They try to talk to people because they enjoy conversation, and they'll usually turn the conversation around so it comes back to them. They're, shall we say, very selfish in that way. They're egocentric. That's what selfishness brings us to, is they like to have their ego stroked. If you have somebody that's a sanguine in a position, they'll constantly be asking you, well, how am I doing? I mean, am I reaching you? Is this okay? They'll know that they're doing an okay job, but they just like to hear it. They will readily accept praise. They will readily embrace what other people have to say about them. They like to get complimented. They live on compliments. They like to be the life of the party. And, in the teenage world, a sanguine is the best and the worst friend a person can have, because they'll be your best friend as long as you're there giving them attention and love. But just like a Labrador Retriever that's a puppy or Buster, my Shih Tzu, that as soon as you walk away or somebody else comes in the room, even while you're talking with them, it's not uncommon for them to be diverted, see somebody new, and they'll just break away and start talking to them. So they tend to be egocentric, which means they place their own needs before anyone else's. Okay? Lastly, which is really, I call it a detriment. You might call it a strength. For salespeople, it would be a strength. But they tend to exaggerate. They will make a mountain out of a molehill. That's an old terminology from my youth. But in other words, everything's big in life. They're like a teenager that's going through the drama phase. And they will try to make drama out of just about anything. The worst thing about a sanguine is not only will they exaggerate, but they will try to drag other people into whatever it is they're exaggerating about. And it can cause you to really mess up other people's lives, because the sanguine will get over it within a couple hours. But once they've drugged somebody else in, like, so-and-so really dits me, or didn't treat me right, or I felt like they were neglecting me. They'll throw out these things that will cause other people to become agitated, like a choleric will take it personal, but then they're over the next time they see the person. They're their best friend again. So how can you really identify a sanguine by these characteristics? For instance, if you tell a joke, a sanguine will be the first one to laugh out loud. They're very boisterous. They want people to know they're happy. They'll be the first one to cry during a sad movie. They'll like to dominate whatever the conversation is. I mean, it's not uncommon if you're talking and they want to talk to actually butt in and talk louder because they feel what they have to say is more important. Sanguines are known for recognizing and responding to people instantly. Somebody walks in the room, they notice it. Somebody says something, they'll instantly jump on it. It's like going to a pond where the fish are fed at 3 o'clock, and on the days when they have people coming in to fish, they don't feed them, and they give you the lures that look exactly like the food, the flies, and you throw it, and bam, 15 fish jump for it. A sanguine will jump at the opportunity to respond to somebody. If somebody is a sanguine and they're in a room and they see you looking at them, it's common for them to use a body expression, like they'll wink at you or they'll nod to let you know across the room that they're there. So they can also be coming across as flirtatious. But actually, they're not sexual at all in that way towards the person, but the person doesn't know it because they'll use things that you may consider as a personal way of doing things. You know, like they'll brush their head back, wink, they'll do something that will make you think that they've engaged you in an interesting way. When it's not true, they just want you to know that they've recognized that you've noticed them. So, sanguines are people. That is their natural trait. And I guess the best way to say it is that God has given the sanguine a personality to where they can live in the present. They totally live in the frontal lobes. They don't live in the bottom part. They don't live in the back. They're not highly analytical. They're not always analyzing everything around them. They're not working out formulas. They're living in the present. They forget the past. They get over things easily. They'll act like they're incredibly hurt or moved or emotional. They'll go to a funeral and they will wail and cry with everybody, but then 2 hours later they'll be stuffing themselves at the brunch. The sanguine is a person that is highly optimistic. They can float from a very positive to a very negative to a very negative. As the conversation goes, you can have a sanguine who's all for doing something, but then as the next person chimes in and says, well, you know, these things might happen, they'll say, oh, well, you know what, I'm against it. But then another person can chime in, they'll go back over. So their optimism can also be a downfall, which gives them what we would call a facilitating psyche, which means they facilitate or they'll go into the home of whichever door is open. They're easy to inspire. If you want to do a project, they'll jump on board. They don't care how fast the train is moving. If you say, hey, let's catch that train, they'll jump on it with you. But because they're always enthusiastic, they will do things that a choleric or a phlegmatic wouldn't even think about doing, or a melancholy. Melancholy are some of the most analytical, greatest minds ever. And they'll say, you know what, that's not really a good idea. These are some of the potential downfalls or pitfalls of doing that. Sanguine doesn't think about any of that. You say, you know, hey, we should do this. All right, let's get it. And then their enthusiasm will influence those around them. They are somebody that has the ability to really influence others. But the problem is when the project fails or looks like it's going to fail, they're the first ones to walk away or bail out. So, people will love to be around sanguines. I love sanguines. Who doesn't love a sanguine? Sanguines are very personal, but they're openly personal. They will share their experiences. They will talk about things that they ought not to talk about. The TMI, too much information. I mean, I've met sanguines that they will start sharing things. I'll say, no, stop. I don't want to hear that. Keep that to yourself. And they don't understand. I really don't want to hear it. Because there are some things that nobody should ever talk about. But to them, no conversation is too broad. So, sanguines in school will be well liked. They'll be the one that everybody says is going to be successful, because a lot of teachers just have bachelor's or master's, but they've never really thought things through. They become more like a teenager, or teachers will take on the affirmations and the empathy level of the people they work with after several years. So they will often call a sanguine the person most likely to succeed, but actually they're the ones that never succeed. They are always working menial jobs. Because they're weak-willed, they're undisciplined, they have what many would call a self-defeating personality complex, because they will go through cycles. They will continually go through cycles. They may have, by the time they're my age, 30, 40 different jobs. No real career. They like to touch. They're touchers. They will touch people when they talk. Because of this and because of their openness, they will have an incredible attraction towards the opposite sex. A sanguine is the number one, and it's because of the way they respond to people, the number one person that will be having extramarital affairs. They won't intend to. That's not their intention. But what will happen is, because of their attitude and the way they interact, people take it as flirtation. And that causes other people to move on to their actions, to respond. But the sanguine, because they're controlled by their emotions, when somebody starts showing them positive attention sexually, they in turn respond. It's like throwing gas on a fire. And in a short time, matter of weeks to usually several months, a sanguine will have an affair. Sanguines are often called deceitful and dishonest, undependable, and that's because they'll say something, but then if they lose interest, they don't do it. They don't follow through. They're undisciplined. They're very weak-willed. Sanguines easily overeat and gain weight. They find it hard to resist anything that satisfies or gives them an urge, or that works within their conscious and mind. You can't put a sanguine on a diet. A sanguine has to have a control group, or it has to be in a setting to where you literally control them. They will get involved in drugs or alcohol. They're very easily peer pressured. This is their greatest weakness. The only temperament that is more emotional than a sanguine is the melancholy. But the melancholy is tempered in a different way. They're more introverted than extroverted. And that's what protects the melancholy and also gives them the analytical ability for greatness. A sanguine, once again, not only is undisciplined and weak-willed, but they have a lack of emotional consistency. This is probably their greatest limitation vocationally. They're unable to control themselves emotionally. If they get miffed or biffed or are upset or don't feel like something's going their way, it's not uncommon for them to walk away from a job or to tell a person off, or typically they'll go behind the individual's back and speak about them first to try to build a group setting of support, to find people to bond with them, and that only makes it worse. It's because when you add a high ego or an egotistical persona to a weak-willed, undisciplined, emotionally unstable person, it will create just a recipe for failure. So sanguines struggle in that area. Another area that they struggle with is honest humility. They will put out a false humility. It's unnatural for a sanguine to be humble. It's not something that's in their repertoire. So for them to be humble, it's very hard. They just are too outbursty, too outgoing. They just, once again, I'm going to touch upon this, are incredibly disorganized. And it reminds me of some of my mother's friends when I was growing up. She had a friend who, back then, women carried huge purses. I mean, it was like a small briefcase or duffel bag. And this person was so disorganized, they would take things out of their purse looking for something. Finally, they would just dump it. They would just cover the table. And then they're looking, but then they get distracted and start talking about all this. That's a pure sanguine. And for me as a child, it was very annoying. I hated going to visit that person, even though they were good friends with my mom. So if you're a clean person, or somebody that likes an organized home, an organized room, if you're a parent and you've got a sanguine for a child, you might as well just deal with it. That child's room is going to be a mess. I've got a teenage daughter right now, and she's 13, and she is I would say 80% sanguine. I'm afraid to walk in her room because you might step on something that'll stick in your foot or something. It's just a mess. And so anyway, even though they dress really well, if you go to their room, you'll say, how in the world did you ever find your clothes in this mess? So a sanguine, they are good-hearted people. They're good-intentioned people. They really do try their best. They just don't have the ability to be the best. And, sanguines can be dangerous people to have, especially if they're the leader of the pack, especially among teenagers. Sanguines are the type of person to say, hey, let's go bridge diving, and they'll do it. They never think about getting injured, and so they will do things, they will do extreme sports without thinking it through. They will simply say, wow, that's cool, let's do this. I remember when my son, Jordan, he was an incredible skateboarder. This is before it became famous. This is 20 years ago. And he would do the bike routines, go in there and flip them around. He was incredibly good. And he brought a video home to show me skateboarders. And I, to this day, cannot get that video out of my head. This is back in the days of VHS. And these kids were doing the skateboards and coming up and going down a ramp sideways, a railing. And one of them missed and just, I've never seen anything like that before. It was horrible. And I thought to myself, son, why in the world would you do that? That's crazy. Oh, no, Dad, it's a blast. They have no thought about personal injury. So they will do things that most people would consider insane. Sanguines hate rejection. They cannot deal with rejection. This is another of their great weaknesses. So a sanguine, rather than creating disapproval, will lie to you. Not because they want to be a liar, but because they don't want to make you upset or disproving or rejection of them. This is another reason why they're called deceitful. Because you may, for instance, if you're on a diet or you're obese and your spouse is trying to get you to lose weight and you're sanguine, and they'll say, did you eat that ice cream? They'll say, what ice cream? Oh, no, I don't know who did it. I mean, my wife, because of my heart condition, is constantly writing me to eat nothing but vegetables with water. No oils, no olive oil, nothing. Last night I had so much chest pain, I was up all night. So I went and got the kids ice cream and ate a pint of it. This morning, she's going through the trash. She pulls the container up. She does it every morning because she's like a phlegmatic. She's got to control everything. We'll get into them later. That's going to be fun. She says, did you eat the ice cream last night? I said, absolutely. Why? It's not healthy. I said, because when I'm in pain and I need comfort, I know Haagen-Dazs is always there to see me through. The kids thought it was funny. She didn't. I did. But I'm not going to lie to her. Sanguine does not want to disappoint somebody, so they'll stretch the truth, exaggerate, or they'll lie to them. They're incredibly flexible in the way that they will speak things. This is called a treacherous trait. They will bend the truth in order to keep people happy. They're not good for managers, not good in management. Whereas a choleric will not lie, cheat, or steal, a sanguine doesn't see a problem with it. They believe the end justifies the means. They will walk over other people's rights. They will do whatever they want, when they want. So they have destructive life patterns. So they often suffer because of it. A sanguine, because of their ability to embellish, to exaggerate, to use deceit, they will be the first to get married, but also the first to get divorced. So if you're living with a sanguine, you have to learn how to communicate to them so you don't force them to lie to you. They need to learn to be an adult. They need to learn to talk things through and to be honest. They need to learn to temper and control their personality. That's called behavior modification. You can't change the temperament, but you can change your characteristic, the traits of your characteristics, and the way your personality works out. So whenever I work with a couple and I tell them that you each have a temperament, characteristics, and personality, but when you come together, you're a new creation. And as you join together, you modify each other. So, in a love relationship, which is what marriage is, one of the 9 necessary building blocks is modifying your personality and changing your characteristics. So for a sanguine, the number one thing they need to do is learn to speak the truth in love, not worrying about causing the other person's feelings to be hurt or to reject them. If you're doing something destructive that hurts a person's feelings, then change it. Stop. Stop your emotions, depersonalize it, and take control. If your eating habits are destructive, stop. Take control. I have a great deal of sanguine in me. Obviously, we're 27 minutes into this and I'm still talking, but it's a big subject. But because I realize my eating habits are getting out of control again, I'm going to fast all day today, just drink water, take some oil of oregano, or take some hot pepper juice. I'll stick a couple drops of that in water to help clean my artery or my veins out. And then I'll go back on a totally greens vegetable diet tomorrow. This is Dr. Knotts. I hope this helps you to understand the sanguine a little bit more. If you're married to one or if you are one, you can work through this and have a great, healthy, productive life. You can be the greatest of Christians, and a sanguine that learns to temper themselves is the greatest evangelist the Lord will ever use. All right. Lord bless you all. Have a great day. I will speak on the choleric next. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.